Hi singers! There is a lot of information and advice out there for us, isn't there? So how do we know which information and advice is right for us? Well, the first thing we're going to do is vet the sources of that information and advice. We're going to determine whether or not that advice is based on sound scientific principles and pedagogical practices. In other words, we need to make sure that whomever we're getting that information and advice from knows what they're talking about. And then once we've separated the wheat from the chaff, the good from the bad, and determined that the advice that we're receiving is coming from good, reputable, reliable sources, how do we assess the value of that information and advice for us as individuals? There is a lot of good advice, but not all good advice is good for all singers. So again, how do we decide which advice is right for us? Well, we can't decide that until we know what our goals and our immediate training needs are. And those goals and needs are going to be different from singer to singer, which means that the advice that each of us needs is going to be different. The advice that's suitable for a breathy singer, for example, is going to be very different from the advice that's suitable for a singer who has a very pressed, forced, or squeezed voice, because their training needs are different. They're both good pieces of advice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good advice for both of those singers or for all singers. So this is why we need to examine and assess the value of a given piece of advice based on our individual training needs and goals. We need the right advice for us, and we can't know what that right advice is until we know what our needs are. Figuring out our training needs, what we really need, may require a little bit of detective work on our parts. So let's say we have a register break, an annoying, frustrating register break between the lower and upper registers. Well, we need to figure out why we're experiencing that particular vocal challenge. We need to get to the bottom of it. Is there something about how we're using our breath, how we're aligning our bodies, how we're shaping our vowels, all of the above? Until we know the why we're experiencing a particular vocal challenge, we can't research and know the how to go about addressing that challenge, how to make things better, and what advice we actually need to look for. And then we find advice that addresses that specific training need. Now there is one other really important piece to this puzzle, and that is we need to find the right advice at the right time. Sometimes singers will apply to their singing really good advice that they're not yet ready for, and it doesn't work out. So they then assume that either there's something wrong with the advice or there's something wrong with them. The advice that we're ready for now isn't necessarily the same advice that was right for us a year ago, and it's not going to be the same advice that we'll need a year from now. And that's because we are growing and changing as singers, and our training needs and goals change. Now, I know that a lot of you are working toward your singing goals independently without the assistance of a singing teacher, and I do believe that it's entirely possible for us to learn how to sing on our own, but professional singing teachers can help. We are skilled at helping our students figure out what their immediate training needs are and setting them on the right path, giving them the right advice at the right time. So in review, we want to make sure that we vet the sources of the information and advice that we're finding to make sure that it's based in sound scientific principles and pedagogical practices. And then we want to make sure that we're getting the right advice for us as individual singers at the right time. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching today. If this video was helpful and informative, please give it a thumbs up, and also please consider subscribing to this channel so that you'll be notified every time I post new videos. Happy singing!